So welcome to In It Together, Successful Ensemble Playing. I'm Lori Sutherland. I'm a composer, clarinet teacher. I play with a lot of local groups. I direct and run my own community clarinet choir. Um, and then I will let Carol introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy you're here today. I think this is going to be a really great event. And I see some people that I recognize from previous Zoom rooms. So welcome to all of you enthusiasts. I love the word enthusiast because amateur is not always accurate in describing us, right? So I am an enthusiast. I'm holding my clarinet for support. I have been playing for about almost 20 years again after having given up clarinet right before I went to college. And then one of my kids took up clarinet, and I decided, oh, I think I want to play clarinet again. So I am a boots on the ground enthusiast, and we are so happy to have you all here. I see Sean. Hi, Sean. See lots of names I know. So, Lori and I are going to talk about common musical concerns as relates to ensemble playing. I'm going to focus on this from the enthusiast standpoint. Lori's going to talk about it as a facilitator of a group and a music educator. So Lori's got the slides up, and we're going to go ahead and go to the first slide, Lori, huh?
Yes, I am trying to. My toolbar is in the way, so it's not letting me share it like I'm trying to do. So let me see if this button will work. There we go.
That's beautiful.
Feel free to type some questions in the chat. We will do what we can to answer them as we go along, and then we hope to have enough time at the end for further questions and comments. So I think we're ready to go, Carol.
All right, great. So I'm talking about blend, and on the slide, you see that there are 5 bullet points. And what I want to say about blend as relates to ensemble playing is that when I first started playing again, people would say, oh, can you blend? Can you blend more? You're not blending. And I thought to myself, well, what really is blend? And how do I do this? And so Lori and I came up with 5 aspects of blending, or things that you should think about when you're thinking about blending that would help you achieve this. Because obviously in an ensemble, unless we're a soloist, we want to blend with the fabric of the piece that we're playing. So the first topic is tone. What is tone? Tone is the quality of a sound or pitch. What is its color? Does it have highs and lows, darks, brights? Is it centered? Is it maybe spread a little more? What is the focus? What is the timbre? All right. And what is good clarinet tone? Well, that's really up to you to decide. And how do you decide what you want to sound like? Well, you might listen to professionals and decide what it is you like about the way they sound, and try to emulate that in your own playing based on tone quality. So the other thing that comes with tone is having good playing habits, such as embouchure. How do we form our embouchure? How do we voice? How do we use our air? How do we move our air? How do we support our air? And these are all things that a private teacher can help you to make sure that you are doing those things in the best possible way for you. Then comes intonation and pitch, because obviously we can't blend if we're playing out of tune, right? We're going to stand out. So when I started playing again, I thought, well, I don't really know whether I'm sharp or flat. How do I hear that? How do I hear if I'm high or low? So I started playing with a tuner on my stand, especially long tones, slower long tones, not not so much what Jay did, but whole notes on a particular pitch, and then listening, using your tuner and listening to what the pitch tendencies would be for your clarinet, for your range. What are you in the shallow? What are you in the clarion? What are you in the altissimo? Okay, and the other thing I really want to say about intonation and pitch is, if you really, really, really know your band piece or your orchestra piece or your chamber music piece, whatever you're playing, know it inside out. Do score study, listen to it, sing it, practice it. Then you can open up your ears and you can listen to what other people are doing, and you become more part of the fabric of your ensemble. Okay, style. I can't blend if I'm playing a Sousa march like a Mozart clarinet concerto. So decide what style of music you're playing and talk to your band director or listen to other people or listen on YouTube to how to match that style. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Lori, you were going to talk about instrumentation as relates to, let's say, a clarinet choir or ensemble.
Yes. Did you want to first talk about dynamics?
Oh, I skipped over dynamics. I'm so sorry, folks.
That's okay.
We were talking about long tones, and we were talking about the Weber exercise. And obviously, when you're playing in a group, you have to match dynamics. So how to practice dynamics: use your long tones. Probably want to really overemphasize dynamics in an ensemble. And think about the phrase, preserve the melody. So if you're not playing the melody, maybe you should just sit back a little bit. Dynamics also specific to your composer. Mahler dynamics might be different than, let's say, Sousa March dynamics. Always listen down, listen for flute, listen for oboe when you're playing very soft if they have a higher, a bigger role. All right, I think I covered it, right? You're going to do instrumentation?
Yes, instrumentation. In a concert band, you usually have 3 clarinet parts. While it is nice to have an equal number of people on each of those, if you don't have equal numbers, if anything, favor having more people on the third part. The first part is going to be heard, just the nature of that range of the instrument. And it can be a lot more challenging to hear seconds and especially thirds. And then in a clarinet choir, where you often have the auxiliary instruments, E flat, alto, bass, and contra. Again, E flat's going to be heard. You usually only need one of those. Alto can be surprisingly hard to hear just because of the range it plays in compared to what else is going on. So again, you might try to favor having things almost a little more bottom heavy because those top notes are going to come out no matter what. So unless we have anything else to add for blend, we'll go ahead and move on to, hopefully, articulation. One of the things I come across in my own group is tonguing, especially sluggish tonguing as we try to get faster. There are some things we can do to help with that. So try to think of lightening up your articulation, especially when you're trying to play fast tongued notes. The less motion you have on your tongue against the reed will help make things quicker. And the same goes with our fingers. If our fingers are flying off the instrument, it takes a lot longer to get them back to the instrument. And that's kind of the same thing that happens with your tongue and the reed. So if you can keep your tongue close to the reed, try to lighten things up, even in fortissimo sections. It's okay to back off a dynamic so that your tonguing stays with the group. As a director of my own group, I would rather us not be playing fortissimo if it means that the tonguing is a lot cleaner. And then also remember your air support. Air support does so much more than just give us the sound on our instrument. By supporting from our diaphragm and our core, that can actually help what's going on up here with your tonguing, and it can take some of the load off. So try to remember to keep that air going and help use your air to also drive that articulation. So to piggyback what Carol talked about with blend and style, the same thing happens with articulation. Trying to match articulation and your style within a piece and within a group. To go back to the Mozart versus Sousa, they're going to have different types of staccato. Remember that staccato actually means separated, not short. So you're going to have, yes, short and separated for those marches. And ideally, the entire section will be doing that. If you're playing a Mozart overture, the staccatos are going to be a little puffier, and they're not going to be quite as, they're still going to be separated, but they're not going to be the really short, separated staccatos that you have in the march. And the more that your section can come together and agree on articulation style, the more cohesive your section's going to be. And the more you will also then lend to blend, which we talked about earlier. Carol, do you have, I think I covered most of it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
I would just say, again, I like to focus often on these, what I call like music code words, like blend, a code word for playing too loud or sticking out. A lot of the band directors will like to hear a lighter articulation. So maybe just thinking about what can I do inside of my mouth to help me articulate more lightly, and maybe just, I don't know if you can see me, but maybe just taking this part of your clarinet, the mouthpiece and the barrel, and experimenting and really thinking about where is your tongue hitting the reed, and how does that feel and how does that sound when we do that, because obviously we can't see inside our mouths. And then the other thing for articulation, I think that is really important, is air, because air will fix almost everything on clarinet as far as I'm concerned. So good luck with your articulation. You can practice it and you can get faster.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so our next slide that we are going to cover is rhythm. We have in our committee here, the Clarinet Enthusiast Committee, a member named Josh Gu. He has a very great YouTube presence. I suggest you check him out. And Lori, do you think you can play this metronome exercise? It's a short on YouTube.
It is, but when I experimented before, it just wasn't, I couldn't get it to work.
Okay, all right. So again, as a enthusiast, a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm just not good at rhythm, or I don't know rhythm. I was never my strong point. I think that if you think about rhythm as math, you can decipher just about any math problem. You can decipher any rhythm. Okay, so we can teach ourselves better rhythm, and we can practice by clapping, by singing, by using our metronome. So oh, you went back.
Sorry, yeah. I was trying to click on something.
So one thing I do want to talk about that I hear a lot in my bands is inaccurate entries and releases. So we're not coming in together. We're not sustaining fully. And there's an acronym there right next to that bullet point called BEAR, just like the Home Depot paint, BEAR. And acronym for 4 words. And I have to give credit for this, I learned from a friend of mine named Rob Patterson, who is the clarinet professor at Boston University. So the B stands for breathe. And this is done with the clarinet at the ready position. So you're already with the clarinet, you're breathing. The E stands for embouchure, forming your embouchure around your mouthpiece. And this happens all very quickly, actually, over a beat or two. The H is hold. In other words, you've breathed, you've formed your embouchure, now you're holding back, and the R is the release. So we set ourselves up for our entry in a very deliberate way, and we're not grabbing our clarinet last second and trying to do everything at once. Breathe, put the clarinet in our mouth, form our embouchure, get the air moving, and then releasing, at which point we are probably late. Okay, so think about your entries and releases, and you can practice these on a single quarter note with your metronome. The other point we have is afterbeats, and I wanted Lori to talk a little bit about afterbeats, maybe specifically related to the bass clarinet, because I think that's a little more challenging, getting the air moving.
Yeah, exactly. Because with the bass, because it's a larger instrument, it takes more air. It takes just a tiny bit longer to get yourself ready in terms of bare. And with afterbeats, clarinets don't have to play them a lot in concert band. Once you move into chamber music, you have to play them a lot more. And I like to joke about channeling our inner French horn player because they are so used to afterbeats. There are ways to practice them. And even just picking a single note and playing it with like a march you find online can help. It doesn't matter if you're on the right pitch or not, just getting used to it and singing it. With the bass clarinet, because bass isn't usually playing the afterbeats, they're playing the downbeats, it's imperative that you are solid and ready and you are anticipating those downbeats. And you keep going and you're not relying on hearing the afterbeats in order to then play your next downbeat. And also, again, it takes just a tiny bit longer to get set and ready because of the air and the volume needed for bass. But if you can help provide that solid foundation, then the afterbeats will have a lot easier time playing their afterbeats. And so then I think Carol was going to talk more about syncopation.
Right. Well, syncopation and afterbeats, I guess they could kind of go together.
Mhm.
I think syncopation is something that might come later in your study of rhythm. You can practice that with a metronome. If you have a musical partner with good rhythm that can help you sing your part. One thing I do want to say about syncopation is if you can internalize the downbeat, it will very much help you come in on an upbeat. So these are all things that can be practiced, that can be learned, and you should absolutely never resign yourself to the fact that you're just not good at rhythm. Doesn't exist anymore. All right. And I think we can go to the next slide, Lori.
Okay. Runs. We're clarinet players. We play a lot of runs. It's just part of the nature of our instrument and the role it plays in various ensembles. If you were here a few years ago for our virtual event, I led a session on how to practice runs. I left a link in there that you can download that PDF. So with runs, there are ways to practice them. My biggest takeaway is to break things down and put them back together. So that might be taking just a section. Say you have 4 measures full of 16th note runs. try taking just 2 beats, the very first 2 beats of that, and practice them slowly. Get used to it. Do things like beats 2 and 3. Try those. There are various ways that you can break things down and put them back together. Find patterns. Is this really just an F scale that happens to start on C? If you practice your scales, your thirds and arpeggios, that can go a long way toward being ready to play a run when you get to it. Because so much of our music is built on those scales and thirds, etc. There will still be some differences, and that's where you note those, you break that part down, you practice it, etc. But the more you can find patterns, and then also where it changes. Patterns are so important to learning how to play runs. Now, in section playing, especially, consistent pulse between all the players can make the run sound so much more clean. There are ways to practice this too with a metronome. Say, again, we have a bunch of 16th notes. What you can do is you could set your metronome to play the 8th note pulse instead of just playing the quarter note pulse. And that can help you get very consistent with all 4 of those 16th notes throughout the beat. And then as a group, you have to be able to feel those pulses so that the group is playing together, because there's a lot of music in band and clarinet choir where multiple clarinet parts have the same run. And you might also have it with flutes or something. And so to have that consistent pulse will really help the group sound more like a group that's playing together, as opposed to everybody is just kind of doing it on their own. Then also where to simplify or sit out. And actually the second breakout rooms, Josh has a whole session on this topic. So I would recommend, if you don't go see his live today, go back afterwards to the YouTube channel and watch it, because I have no doubts he is going to have some really great tips on how to simplify your runs when the conductor goes too fast. Let's see. And I think that's about it for runs. Carol, did you have anything to add with that?
Well, I think you covered mostly everything that I was going through my head. So Lori was referring to what we commonly call extended practice techniques. And I would say that there's a lot of new research, specifically from the sports world, that you can look up and research online about how to practice. Things have changed very much from 20, 30, 40 years ago, when it was just practice slow, set your metronome, and keep on increasing the speed. So I would say try to make it fun. Play games with your metronome, as Lori said, and yeah, just work at it. And if you can't do it, it's okay to sit it out. If you just can't, if you feel that you've given a certain passage a fair amount of time, fine, sit it out, and maybe next year you can do it.
And I did want to add, when you do practice your runs and you feel like you've had a great session and yeah, I'm feeling really good about that run, don't be surprised if the next time you go to practice it or play it, it feels like you don't even know how to play the clarinet, because that's a very common thing that happens to us. Just be aware that that is part of the process, is that you will go back the next day and there is a chance that it will feel like you didn't make any progress. But believe me, you did make progress, even if in that moment it doesn't feel like it. So keep persevering with that. I like to warn my student, I have to remind myself that too, that, okay, it's all part of the process, and trust that it will work.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip. Let's to the next slide. We have about 10 minutes. I think we should try to leave at least 5 minutes at the end for
I
some
would like
questions.
to.
Okay, so this managing your music, this relates specifically to printed music, not digital. So I do not play off a tablet. I'm talking about hard copies. So from an ensemble player's viewpoint, you may join groups where you get a link and you just print it out, or you may be given traditional music that you can mark carefully and maybe erase later. So I'm going to say mark your music. Don't be shy to mark any mistakes you make the very first time. Mark it. Put the sharp in, put the accidental in, circle the key change. There are different kinds of tools that I use in my music, such as highlighter tape, which you can find on Amazon, to mark, let's say, the roadmap of your piece to get back to your del signe or however the piece is written. So definitely consider the highlighter tape. If you're playing off a very, very old copy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a Sousa March, you can actually, I have a friend who sends it into a service online that will rewrite it and print it very legibly. And if any of you want that, I can try to come back with that particular service. Again, good stand lighting for us folks who, need that now. Bifocal contact lenses, glasses, make a darker copy of your music, enlarge your music on your printer. And then the final bullet point, planning page turns, I think is really important. Let's say you have a double-sided connected, so a 4-piece of music, and you're playing first clarinet, and you basically are playing the whole band piece. Where are you going to do your page turn? What copy are you going to make? And when are you going to move your music? Can you mark in your measures rest, move your music? And can you practice that so when the concert comes, you're not fumbling with your music? So yeah, practice and plan and make it easy for yourself. Next slide. Okay, so equipment. I think this goes without saying that your instrument should be in good playing condition. Have it serviced if you play a lot, every 6 months to a year. Don't play your reeds that you played from when you were a teenager. There are great reed options out now. Mouthpieces do wear, so consider replacing your mouthpiece, maybe if it's older than a certain number of years, depending on how much you play. Ligature, I think, is less important than mouthpiece, obviously, in your instrument. But these are all, everything that we've been discussing is obviously also affected by your equipment choices. And our goal in a musical ensemble is to sound uniform and blend. Any other ideas, Lori, about that one?
Really, more for the ligature standpoint, I agree totally that is one of the, least important things in terms of just upgrading your ligature is only going to do so much. But it's mainly for making sure that that is in working condition. If you have a metal ligature, is it bent? If it's bent, it's not holding the reed on like it should ideally. So it's more making sure that that and your mouthpiece are, again, in good working condition and that they're not making things harder for you.
I agree. Yeah, the goal is to make music, folks, and enjoy it and not make it challenging. Have fun with it.
Yeah, and if you're fighting your equipment, it's going to be hard to have fun playing.
Agreed.
Yeah. So then participation, because we're here because we all play in some sort of group, whether it's a community band or a woodwind quintet or a clarinet choir. There are certain things that we should be aware of as we participate in a group. And for me, running my own group, one of the biggest things is communication. Let the band leader or the director or whoever's organizing it, let people know if you're going to be absent. Let people know if you're having some issues with something that's making it challenging to play. Communicate. That's one of the biggest things that will help any participation. And that kind of also leads into commitment and attendance, where if you know you can make a concert, but you can't make the 3 rehearsals beforehand, maybe it's time to rethink whether you should sit out this concert cycle and rejoin later. Attendance, if you're going to be absent, please let the director know. I know for my own group, there were a few times where had I known so many people were going to be absent, I honestly would have canceled rehearsal that day. And it helps the people who then are still there to rehearse, because it wasn't really fair to them either that we had to figure out a different expectation of what rehearsal was going to be that day. So just, again, communication, and think about what you are able to commit to, how many things you might have to miss. Again, life happens. We get sick, we go on vacation, things happen. It's just let people know so that they know what to expect. And then I'll turn it over to Carol for the next bullet point.
Great. I see there's a question in the chat already. So I'll just cover the final 2, or at least talk about group vibe and expectations. So if you live in an area where you're fortunate enough to have many choices in terms of which musical group you choose to join, try to match what you're looking for, obviously, with that group. And you can sit in with various groups on various evenings and see which one best matches your personality or what you're looking for. And role of section leader, I would say that you are either managing the group's music, and setting an example for the group in terms of musicality, behavior, etc. Do you agree, Lori?
Yeah, the section leader definitely is a leader. And you should also consider whether being able to coach as well, and not just be sitting there and getting mad if the rest of the section isn't playing something right. Expect to help people out and try to help your section be the best section they can be.
So Lori, it looks like there was a question in the chat about tools to facilitate communication.
Yes.
So there's an answer there already.
Yeah, from me.
I would say, so to answer the curious how other bands do this, I'm in a band that uses MailChimp, that has a board, that's a nonprofit. I'm in a group that has a band manager. I don't think this is a paid person. I'm in an orchestra that's a nonprofit that has paid personnel that manage these things, mostly done via email by the group manager, right, Lori?
Yeah, email. For my own clarinet choir, we use Google Groups because it allows you to send email to one email address, which is, I think, knock on wood, clarinets at googlegroups.com or whatever. And that message can then get sent to everybody. We got to a point where trying to do email with copy everybody on it was a little cumbersome, and it sometimes got marked as spam as my group grew. So, but email is still, even though some people don't check it as much, we also, with my group, set out the expectation of this is how our group communicates versus via email. They do have my co-conductors' cell phone numbers too, so that people can also text, but all official communication ends up getting done by email. And that's kind of what's happened with the other community groups I'm in, just because pretty much everybody still has an email address. And I agree with the comment that, yes, not everybody will use an app or Facebook or something, and that's fine. So,
Okay, so we all just got thanks, Lori. We
Mhm.
got a from Jessica that we have 3 minutes until we go to the next meeting room, which is the master class with Kristen Denny Chambers.
Yeah.
And
There
before
is
we
another
go,
question.
there's a question about afterbeats. Can you answer that, Lori?
Yes. So yes, after beats means off the beat. So if you think of your typical 4/4 measure and you're counting eighth notes as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, the after beats are all those ands. So, and if you listen to the French horns in pretty much any Sousa march, you will have a good idea of what these afterbeats are. So it's basically anything that's not right on a beat. And it's a common accompaniment pattern. And like I said, clarinets in band don't have to play it very often, which is why I say channel your inner horn player or make friends with a horn player and see if they can help you feel what the afterbeats are. But it is something you still can practice, though admittedly it's a little more challenging to practice it on your own.
I think
Yeah,
that
let
pretty
me
much,
know if that answered the question.
I think that was a great explanation. And I want to thank everyone for coming today.
Mhm.
And I hope that your ensemble playing is blendier and more rhythmic and more style matching than ever before. And we're so happy to have you here as part of the enthusiast committee. So in case you don't know, oh, thank you. In case you don't know, the next piece that is being played in the masterclass is actually a piece that was commissioned by our committee for the enthusiast community. So I suggest you stay on and hear it. It will be premiered officially in Dublin this year at Clarinet Fest. So I'm just going to wave goodbye to everybody, and I hope I see you in some other rooms. And I want to thank you all for coming today.
Yes, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye.
Okay, and we have 50 seconds left.
Oh, good. Oh, let's see. All right. So do we still have people in the room, or have they left?
We still have some folks. If there's any
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
30 seconds if you have a last question. Otherwise, we will see you in the master class.